For more than 7 decades, Clint Eastwood has stood as one of Hollywood's most iconic figures, a man who defined the rugged cowboy, the cold-blooded anti-hero, and later, the masterful director behind Oscar-winning films. At 94, he is not just a legend, he is an institution. But even legends carry shadows, and Eastwood's journey through Hollywood has been anything but smooth. Behind the steely gaze and the silent strength, there lies a history of bitter feuds, personal betrayals, and public clashes that would mark him as one of the most polarizing men in the industry. While millions adored his tough guy persona, not everyone in Hollywood respected him. Some despised his political views, others clashed with his uncompromising style, and a few who were once closest to him turned into bitter enemies. From failed romances turned courtroom battles to explosive rivalries with directors and actors who dared to challenge him, Clint Eastwood has carried with him a list of enemies that shaped his life as much as his iconic roles did. And now, at 94, we uncover the 5 biggest enemies who defined Clint Eastwood's turbulent Hollywood journey, names that shocked the industry, and stories that reveal the man behind the myth. If there was ever a relationship in Clint Eastwood's life that defined both passion and destruction, it was with actress Sondra Locke. When they first met in the mid-1972nd, Locke was a rising star with an Oscar nomination to her name, and Eastwood was already a global icon. Their chemistry was undeniable, and soon they became inseparable, starring together in a string of films such as The Outlaw Josie Wales and Every Which Way But Loose. To the outside world, it seemed like Hollywood's ultimate power couple, the rugged superstar and the captivating actress. But behind the scenes, their love story was far from romantic. Locke left her husband for Eastwood, believing she had found her true partner. Yet, as years went by, she discovered that Eastwood's charm came with control, secrecy, and betrayal. While living with Locke, Clint reportedly fathered children with other women, a revelation that shattered her trust. By the late 1982nd, the relationship had completely soured. Locke accused Eastwood of manipulation, even of sabotaging her career by pulling strings in Hollywood to prevent her from directing and acting. The breakup escalated into one of the ugliest Hollywood feuds of its time. Locke filed a palimony lawsuit, exposing Clint's infidelities and ruthless side to the public. Clint, in return, used his power and wealth to fight back, creating a years-long legal war that turned their once romantic partnership into an all-out battlefield. In the end, Locke described Eastwood not as the love of her life, but as her greatest enemy, a man who, she believed, destroyed her career and left her broken. Their feud became legendary, reminding Hollywood that behind Clint's stoic screen presence was a man capable of both deep passion and relentless revenge. If Clint Eastwood's feud with Sondra Locke was deeply personal, his battle with director Spike Lee was an all-out war of ideology fought on the public stage. By the 2002nd, Eastwood had reinvented himself as a director of serious, Oscar-winning dramas. His films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, earned him global acclaim, but they also sparked controversy. Spike Lee, never one to bite his tongue, accused Eastwood of erasing black soldiers from his World War II films, suggesting that Clint was deliberately whitewashing history. Eastwood's response was anything but diplomatic. In a press interview, he snapped back at Lee, telling him to shut his face and insisting that his films reflected the stories he chose to tell. It wasn't just a disagreement over artistic choices. It became a cultural flashpoint, exposing the deep divisions in Hollywood about race, representation, and who had the power to tell certain stories. The feud escalated as the media framed it as a clash between two titans, the young, fiery, outspoken Spike Lee versus the old guard, Eastwood, who refused to bow to political correctness. Spike Lee fired back again, accusing Clint of being out of touch and dismissive of minority voices. Clint, in return, doubled down, saying he would not change his films to satisfy critics with agendas. For years, the tension lingered, and though both men moved on with their careers, their clash became symbolic. It wasn't just about two directors, it was about a generational and cultural divide in Hollywood. On one side, Spike Lee fought to amplify marginalized voices. On the other, Clint Eastwood stood his ground as the traditionalist who told stories his way. No apologies given. Even today, fans remember this feud as one of Clint's most infamous public rivalries. A reminder that Eastwood wasn't just battling actors and lovers, but sometimes the very direction in which Hollywood itself was moving. Few rivalries in Clint Eastwood's life captured as much media attention as his feud with documentary filmmaker Michael Moore. Known for his left-leaning politics and his crusades against gun culture in America, Moore became a controversial figure after the release of Bowling for Columbine in 2002. The film challenged America's obsession with firearms, something that Eastwood, a lifelong defender of gun rights and the tough guy persona built around them, took personally. The tension escalated in 2005 when Michael Moore claimed he was considering making a film critical of Eastwood's stance on guns and politics. Eastwood, never one to hold back, responded with a statement that would ignite headlines. During an appearance at the National Board of Review Awards, he joked, or perhaps half-joked, that if Michael Moore ever showed up at his house with a camera, "I'll kill him. I'll shoot him." The remark caused an uproar. While Clint later brushed it off as just a joke, Moore insisted he took it seriously, framing Eastwood as part of the violent gun culture his films criticized. The feud became symbolic of the growing cultural divide in America. Eastwood as the embodiment of conservative, rugged individualism, and Moore as the loud, provocative voice of liberal activism. Though the two never engaged in a direct face-to-face confrontation, their public war of words created one of the most memorable Hollywood rivalries of the 2002. It wasn't about roles or movies anymore. It was about politics, guns, freedom of speech, and the very soul of America. For Eastwood, the feud reinforced his image as Hollywood's last gunslinger, a man who would rather threaten to shoot a filmmaker than allow his beliefs to be challenged. For Moore, it was proof that even legends could be rattled when faced with uncomfortable truths. When Clint Eastwood took on the project J. Edgar in 2011, expectations were sky high. The legendary director was pairing up with one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, Leonardo DiCaprio, to tell the story of J. Edgar Hoover, the controversial FBI director. On paper, it was a perfect match. Clint's reputation for hard-hitting realism and Leo's method, acting intensity. But what unfolded behind the camera was far from harmonious. Reports from the set suggested that Eastwood's old-school minimalist directing style clashed with DiCaprio's meticulous preparation. Clint was known for shooting quickly, rarely asking for more than one or two takes, believing spontaneity created authenticity. DiCaprio, however, was infamous for diving deep into his characters, pushing for multiple takes until every detail felt just right. The result was tension. Crew members whispered that Leo grew frustrated with Clint's get-it-done approach, while Clint allegedly found Leo's constant questioning tiresome. The generational divide couldn't have been clearer. Eastwood, a product of classic Hollywood, valued efficiency and instinct. DiCaprio, the face of modern acting, demanded nuance and perfection. While neither man publicly criticized the other, insiders claimed that Clint swore he would never work with DiCaprio again, despite the film earning critical buzz for Leo's performance. The unease became more visible during press tours. DiCaprio praised the experience, but always carefully, as though walking a tightrope. Clint, meanwhile, gave lukewarm comments about the collaboration, often steering conversations back to the film rather than the actor. To Hollywood watchers, it was clear. Two giants had collided, and neither walked away impressed. Though not as explosive as Clint's other rivalries, his uneasy relationship with DiCaprio revealed another side of the aging icon, a man increasingly resistant to the evolving methods of modern Hollywood. For DiCaprio, it was a reminder that even at the top of his game, working with a legend didn't guarantee respect. In 1968, Clint Eastwood stepped onto the set of Where Eagles Dare, a high-stakes World War II thriller that paired him with the legendary Welsh actor Richard Burton. At the time, Burton was already a towering figure in Hollywood, respected for his Shakespearean gravitas, but infamous for his tempestuous behavior and heavy drinking. For Eastwood, who was still building his reputation beyond the spaghetti westerns, this was a chance to prove himself alongside one of the greats. Instead, it turned into one of the most bitter working experiences of his early career. From day one, the clash was obvious. Eastwood was disciplined, stoic, and laser-focused on efficiency. Burton, meanwhile, was volatile, often arriving late, sometimes under the influence, and prone to treating the production like his personal stage. Crew members recalled tense moments when Burton mocked Eastwood's silent cowboy acting style, calling him wooden and one-dimensional. Eastwood, who had little patience for arrogance, bristled at the insults but stayed outwardly calm, the very definition of his screen persona. The tension exploded during long shoots in the snow-covered Alps. Burton's drinking slowed production to a crawl, and Eastwood reportedly snapped, confronting him about professionalism. Burton, never one to back down, fired back with his signature sharp tongue. While they managed to finish the film, insiders described the atmosphere as toxic, with Eastwood keeping his distance whenever possible. Ironically, the movie went on to become a commercial success, praised for its gripping action sequences. But for Eastwood, the experience left a permanent scar. He later hinted in interviews that working with Burton was one of his least enjoyable collaborations, describing it as a nightmare dressed as a war film. The feud between Eastwood and Burton was more than just clashing egos. It was a battle of styles, temperaments, and values. Eastwood, the rising star of no-nonsense professionalism, versus Burton, the self-destructive genius who thrived on chaos. To this day, fans remember Where Eagles Dare not only as a classic war movie, but also as the battleground where two legends waged their own private war. Looking back at Clint Eastwood's 94 years, one thing becomes clear. Legends are not made by playing it safe. The very same qualities that made him a Hollywood icon, his uncompromising vision, his steely independence, and his refusal to bend, also forged his greatest enemies. Sondra Locke, once the love of his life, turned into his most bitter adversary, dragging their romance into a courtroom war. Spike Lee, a voice of a new Hollywood, clashed with Eastwood over representation, igniting a debate that went far beyond film. Michael Moore, armed with a camera and political fire, provoked Clint into one of his most infamous threats. Leonardo DiCaprio, a star from a younger generation, revealed the cracks between Clint's old-school methods and modern acting. And Richard Burton, the tempestuous genius, gave Clint one of his earliest lessons in the brutality of clashing egos on set. These enemies were not random. They were the inevitable result of a man who lived life on his own terms. Eastwood never bowed to trends, never apologized for who he was, and never softened his words to make others comfortable. In Hollywood, that earned him enemies, but it also earned him respect. Every feud, every rivalry, every public spat only reinforced the image of Clint as the last true gunslinger of American cinema. And yet, what is most fascinating is how these conflicts helped define his legacy. They painted him as a man of contradictions, loyal yet ruthless, passionate yet cold, brilliant yet stubborn. For fans, those contradictions made him human, even as his on-screen presence seemed larger than life. For critics, they were proof that Clint Eastwood was never just an actor or a director. He was a force of nature, impossible to tame. Now, at 94, Eastwood remains a towering figure, a survivor of Hollywood's golden age, who has outlasted nearly all of his rivals. His enemies may have tried to challenge him, to break him, or to expose him, but none succeeded in erasing him. Instead, they became part of his story, the darker threads woven into the tapestry of a career that has spanned nearly 70 years. In the end, Clint Eastwood's enemies did not diminish him. They made him. They reminded the world that even icons have battles, and that behind every steely squint was a man unafraid to fight, on-screen, off-screen, and in life. That is the legacy of Clint Eastwood, a man defined not only by the roles he played or the films he directed, but by the enemies who dared to stand against him and failed.